of IFAC, the International Federation of Accountants, said, the train has left the station. Just make sure that you get on before the last stop. Right, now I'm going to pass on to our panellists, and if Mustafa, if you can start, and then we'll go around in order, and then we'll get on to some questions after you.
In fact, if you have asked me 3 or 4 years ago, what do you think about integrated reporting? I saw at that time integrated reporting as a very intangible concept. And it is really difficult to figure out how integrated reporting would happen. But today I could say that this intangible concept become more and more tangible one. We met with Paul for the first time in Brazil, in Rio, and we discussed at that time integrated reporting, how to implement it in Turkey. And I should say that perhaps integrated reporting concept is a new one, but in the future it will help us to be in a better position. Why? Because we have different reporting: corporate governance reporting, social responsibility reporting, and sustainability reporting, and we prepare different reports for each of these concepts. But when we will prepare integrated reporting, then we should combine all these reports in a meaningful way and create a new one. I think I prefer to use the concept of integrated thinking rather than integrated reporting, because I believe that integrated thinking is much more important than reporting, because there are 3 concepts that should be satisfied for a good integrated thinking: to create policy, to implement it, and to report it. When we calculate the sustainability index, we have different discussions with companies. And at that time, we see that there are many companies that implement certain things, but they don't have any written policy. And when we calculate this sustainability index, we use all public disclosure. We don't accept any non-public disclosure. Why? Because we would like to have all these policies and implementation to be disseminated to the public, to be known by the public, so that the public could evaluate the value chain of the companies in a better shape. Otherwise, you may implement the best practices in the world, but if you don't share it with the public, if you don't have any policy, written policy, it is difficult to convince your institutional investors to buy your shares or to invest in your companies. This is important because from this time until 2030, the world requires about $15 trillion investment. And if your company is one of the companies that will require that $15 trillion investment, you should show your investors that you really deserve getting that investment. And this only could be done by explaining how integrated your processes, your strategy, to get the best outcome throughout your operations. Let me have this short introduction.
No,
and
that's great.
go on.
Thank you very much. So we've heard about it from the viewpoint of the stock exchange. Now we hear about the real people in terms of the businesses that are having to deal with that. So, Haluk, do you want to just give your own perspective?
Well, I'll start with a more macro view, although Mr. King phrased it very well. The business cannot be run as it was run as usual. By the year 2050, it is estimated that our population in the world will be 9 billion people. So these are the basic facts. And the estimated environmental costs as of 2008 were $6.6 trillion. That is 11% of the GDP, are expected to rise to $29 trillion. So this is not sustainable, as we all see. Short-termism and governance issues have also, we have seen, experienced various financial crises that all impacted all our lives, daily lives. So there's a recognized need for a global reporting reform. And it seems that the integrated reporting will be the key to this need. Recently, now we're going to chair the G20 as Turkey, but in the previous one, the B20 panel of 6 accounting networks in the world also stated that for the infrastructure investments, there needs to be a $500 billion funds to be raised. But it's a gap. The gap is $500 billion US dollars annual. So although, as I expressed what's going on, we still have to invest and find money for these investments under these circumstances. And even the G20 workforce on infrastructure investment in the last G20 meetings, they also recommended a review by the IARC about reporting to be more conducive to infrastructure investments. It's obvious that this need is seen by everyone now. So also, Mr. King used the word sustainable capitalism. There's another word we heard after the crisis, that reforming capitalism. That's also from the CEO McKinsey, I read somewhere, I don't know, some time ago. So business and finance will have to balance their short-term and long-term aspirations and ambitions on one hand, and on the other hand, on our corporate side, on the corporates, executives have to be ensure that we are serving all stakeholders' needs, not only the shareholder value anymore. So we have to be inclusive in terms of the perspectives. This will create long-term more value. So again, I think it's obvious that integrated reporting will help us to sort these issues. The thing is, financial reports are still important. We don't mean that financial reports will go away. This will be just complementary on financial reports, because financial reports will still be important for monitoring the progress and operational success of the companies. But integrated reporting will be more into future looking, talking about the future. So it will also be a reorientation of financial markets towards a more sustainable development work that we are talking. It will be also a fundamental step for responsible investment, global integrated reporting. It will be an additional information, especially for the long-term cost of the climate change, which is all the world's concern. So even the policy makers can even benefit from this reporting, not only the investors. Policy makers will find what to do and can recommend better positions. In terms of also building trust and reputation, that has been an issue for the corporate world after this financial crisis. Integrated report is a great tool to manage your reputation, to keep your reputation and gain back the trust, keep the trust. Financial reporting has 100 years background, more than 100 years, and integrated reporting is a very new thing, so it will take time. We cannot make it just from today to tomorrow that everything goes well. But it is obvious that we will all be working on this reporting initiative in the next decade. Maybe some of us started today, some of us will be starting in a couple of years, I'm sure. But this is my beginning.
Great, no, thank you very much. There's a couple of great links. And
just one addition, I forgot. There's a TÜSİAD is the Turkish think tank, which prepared a recent report for this B20 summit to be made in Turkey. This is a couple of weeks ago, and they sent a survey to 6 countries, 3 emerging and 3 developed markets countries, and they search for the priorities and the questions, the answers as from 900 participants. The first ranking is the sustainable green development business. And I should say that feasible and good cost financial resources and global trade, these are all under the sustainability issue in this survey filled by the corporates. So.
Okay, well, I think there's several things that come to mind as you were speaking through there. The question that may come up later is about, is this more reporting, which is what we've got to address. The building trust issue, which I think is another one that underpins what we're doing. And the third was around when you said that financial reporting has been around 100 years. And Ian McIntosh we have here from the IASB. And Ian, of course, you haven't been around for the whole time, have you?
Most of it.
Most of it, yeah. But it reminds me of something that we often talk about, that Apple products, if you go back 4 years, the current range of Apple products, only 60% of them, 40% of them actually exist today that existed 4 years ago. So it just shows that we are in a world that changes very fast, and hopefully that 100 years can be condensed to 4 years, but it's just an anecdote. But the fourth thing that you mentioned, which is I think a link to Eric, is around what you called responsible investment, what I would call the new investment profile of businesses as against ESG or responsible investment. And Eric, you've been at the forefront of this for some time. I wonder if you'd give us your views.
Well, thank you, Paul. First of all, I'm very honored to be here. It's great to be in Istanbul. It's only my second time, and I had some time this morning to enjoy the beautiful city as well. I'm going to speak to you in perhaps different roles. I'm an IRC council member, also the chairman for ICGN, but I think that's non-important. First and foremost, I would like you to see me just as a human being, and I don't have split views.
But you're an investor, you're not a human being.
Well, there are also humans that are investors, and there are investors that are also humans. So, I was formally asked to represent here the ICGN, so I'll give you a short introduction on that organization as well. ICGN is an investor-led organization, and it has governance professionals as its members, and its mission is to promote and to inspire the effective standards of good governance around the world in order to advance the capital markets and global economies worldwide. And we do that with our members, specifically with the help of our members, so it's a member-driven organization, if you like. And we have a lot of committees where our members put a lot of effort and work in and put their views in. And that's very, very helpful for the organization to stay current, to stay ahead. We have investors as members representing over 20 trillion US dollars worldwide. And besides investors as members, we also have corporates as members, because we feel that the balance in the view is so important. And within the ICGN, we have also embraced integrated reporting. And in one of the committees, which eventually accumulated in the updated global governance principles that we launched and adopted in June earlier this year, we mentioned that boards should provide an integrated report, and that is to put the past performance into the context of the future. And investors, we cannot invest in the rear mirror. We need to have that foresight that Paul is thinking about. And similarly, for businesses, we invest in risks. So not everything is certain. But we need to have a very good understanding of how that value is created. And that's why integrated reporting is so important to us as investors as well, because we believe it's leading to indeed better decision making. Paul already mentioned that changes are going fast. And I would say changes are going ever faster. So the speed of change is also increasing. And for investors, it was already mentioned, if we invest in companies, say 30 years ago, we would mostly invest for 80% in tangible assets, in buildings, in factories, in things that are tangible, that are there. If we invest today in a company, we only invest 20% in what's there and 80% in what is not tangible. And that value can change very quickly, sometimes overnight. So we need to be really aware of how a company creates value and whether they take into account all opportunities. If you think about these concepts and you think about new generations to come, you may think, well, that will come later. But I would say, if you need to change, you better take advantage of it and do it today, before you are turned into a laggard, or even worse, a loser. And that's the words that I think Mervyn King used to fail. And I would like to add to that I don't think personally, and as an investor that might sound strange to you, that money or the financial return, which is sort of the holy principle in the financial community, should be the only purpose. And I think our financial community needs also to change and needs to see different purposes. Financial performance stays important, it's part of it, but other things are important there as well. To give you an example, in our GDP, we can measure the locks that we screw on our doors. We cannot measure the safety in the streets. And we can measure in our GDP the hospital visits, but we cannot measure a healthy life. And you can measure the net profit of a company, but you cannot measure the happiness of future generations. I would like to leave it at that. Thanks, Paul.
Brilliant. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. Can I, rather than, as I said, me going back and asking questions, can I open it to the floor? And when you do ask questions, could you say who you are and which organisation you represent, unless you are who you represent, and that would be great. And also, could you, when I have one hand up, could you have other hands up during the conversation? Because I will be scanning. So rather than waiting for the end of an answer, I'll be scanning to see who else has got a question. Okay, so who's going to be brave enough to start? Excellent. First hand up. Have we got mics, actually? We've got a mic, so just hang on one second. For the best question? Sorry? Is there any award for the best question? Award for the best question? Yeah, I'll think about that as we go forward.
Now you know the winner.
Uğur Ünlüer, internal auditor of Otokar. I completely agree and fully support integrated reporting principles, but there are also some issues I need to mention. Firstly, actually I have two questions. My first question is, how can we cope with sustainability issues where Earth's resources are not unlimited and commodity inputs for the businesses, take oil for example, are fluctuating? The resources, I mean the inputs, are not sustainable. Take global warming, rapid expansion of Ebola, for example. Even there are disagreements between governments, and governments are slow to react, and time is ticking. My second question is, do you think that integrated reporting should be mandatory? Thank you very much.
Any other questions while we go? There's one at the front here, please. One front here. Gentleman with the red tie. Yeah.
My name is Murat Sungur Bursa. I'm the chairman of the Sustainability Academy in Turkey. My question is, when we are talking about integrated reporting, in a way we are talking about a kind of an end product, which means unless the kitchen is fully prepared to be reported in an integrated way, then all the efforts are in vain. So the question is, how do we make sure that the corporate management does whatever is required so that they would be proudly and preparedly included in integrated reporting?
That's a very good question. And then I'll just take one more on this round, and it was the gentleman on the far left, right-hand side for you.
Thank you. James Roberts, BDO. In a number of markets, the time in role of CEOs and CFOs gets shorter and shorter. And even their longer-term remuneration incentive plans are actually relatively short-term. That being the case, isn't that something we need to fix before we can genuinely align the interests of management and integrated thinking?
Okay, great. Well, let's stop at that point. I've tried to think which is the best one. Do you want to pick up on specific issues?
On the mandatory side,
Yeah.
you go and I will add.
Okay.
On the mandatory side, I should say that the integrated reporting should not be mandatory in the initial stage, because it takes time to internalize these concepts, especially in emerging markets. Let me share you one example. When we do the sustainability index, we see that even these 30 companies, the biggest companies in Turkey, are not really prepared to share their sustainability issues, or they follow the right path to create that sustainability concept in their companies. So I think especially for emerging markets, we should start with a voluntary approach, comply or explain approach. And then after, perhaps 4 to 5 years later, we should think about a mandatory approach. Otherwise, we may be disappointed about the implementation of these concepts. And if you don't mind, for the corporate management...
Should we pick up on that one, and then we'll come back on the next one?
Okay.
Well, by definition, it is a principle-based approach. It's developed like that. And it wouldn't be right to do it mandatory in close future. It's not very easy to give prescriptions, and the regulatory authorities should keep away from giving strict prescriptions. Yeah, it must give some harmonization and some comparison tools across countries, industries, but you should take into the reality that the circumstances are all different, not only for companies, but for industries, for sectoral differences within an industry, and also geographies. Some issues that are very, water scarcity in one region, but in your other operation it's not an issue at all. So we always talk about, for integrated reporting to be successful, we need integrated thinking. We talk about this from the corporate world. Yes, in the company we must have the integrated thinking, but the policymaker also, on the other hand, should have integrated thinking. I'm happy to see here all the Capital Markets Board, Vice Chairman, Ibrahim Bey, Mustafa, all the, these are finance people, but we will need to have Ministry of Environment, Ministry of Agriculture, Ministry of Labor. When we talk about integrated thinking, it's not only just integrated thinking within the company. This is a policy-making issue, and the Capital Markets Authority, if decides to make the, define the prescription, then we will all be in a big trouble, and there is no example in the world like that. Yeah, GRI is doing something, doing some, harmonization. It's comparable, but making mandatory, regulators like the word very much, but I'm very skeptical about it.
Eric, I don't know if you wanted to add your...
Well, I think
Pennyworth on that.
there's already enough said on mandatory, but I would like to pick up on the other question
Oh, can I? Sorry.
from the same gentleman.
Can I just pick up on mandatory? Can I just add to mandatory
Yes.
just before we pick up? Because I think in integrated reporting speak, or IRC speak, we talk about market-led regulation, if you like, and that's an interesting aspect because actually voluntary, to my mind, is slightly different to something that is market-led. And I think one of the illustrations that's come through is in India. Mr. UK Sinha is the chairman of the Securities and Exchange Board of India. And Mr. Sinha, at a conference like this, actually said to the businesses that are out there, and this was in their main financial newspaper, he said that it's not a question of whether integrated reporting is going to happen, it's a matter of when. And you tell me how I should implement it, or I will tell you. In other words, his call was to business and the investment community to actually say what is it that they wanted from the regulator, rather than trying to put in place regulations without that. Now, whether that gets to the concerns you have over regulator imposition is something different. But it is just something that I think what we're looking for in many ways is regulatory support. And we often use the phrase that, that there's regulation that allows integrated reporting to flourish, rather than regulation that insists on integrated reporting. And a lot of that flourishment, there is such a word, I see Bob here from the US, and I'm sure there are others here, Eric I think is here from the US, but it's not only in the US, where the regulatory environment prevents good strategic reporting, and therefore good integrated reporting. And in many ways, the regulators should, I would say, should look at themselves to make sure that there is an environment that allows it to happen. And maybe that is a way forward, and just picking up on your point. Okay, and does anybody else want to raise anything about the regulatory piece? The regulatory piece, the gentleman here, and then the gentleman there.
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, I can't get up because I've got papers here. My name is Christian Strenger from DWS in Germany, which is the largest German fund investor, 195 billion. On the idea of making it voluntary, I would like to give you a little warning. Too voluntary will not get you the speed that you want. I think our experience from getting corporate governance into the German system was that we had a paragraph in the German corporate law that made comply or explain mandatory. This is perhaps a far-reaching approach that you won't get done until the G20 convene. But there may be other ways, and as you are coming here from the Istanbul Stock Exchange, why not make it sort of more mandatory that some comply or explain feature is part of your premier section listings. In some ways, you could take the Brazilian example that has been more voluntary but inducing, which is the Novo Mercado. You could do the market, a special section for integrated reporting companies. So some kind of connotation must be there. Otherwise, if it's too voluntary, you get a very broad dispersity of the whole exercise.
Oh, great point.
May I?
Please, go ahead.
Thank you for your views. Let me share with you one of our experiences. For example, we calculated the sustainability index for these 30 companies without asking their permission, like a mandatory approach. And some companies from these 30 complain that why don't you ask us whether we are willing to be in the sustainability index or not? I mean, I don't want to be in the sustainability index calculation, but we don't